Hey, what is going on everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario. We're back over at the Xbox One or Xbox Series, whichever system you're going to be using. I'm personally using a Xbox One X here, and here we're going to be looking into something a little bit exciting. We're going to be finally looking into the kernel exploit for SystemOS that has released in the form of Collateral Damage. And no, I'm not just making a pun here or anything, that's quite literally what it's called, Collateral Damage. As it states here on the GitHub repository here, Collateral Damage is a kernel exploit for the Xbox System OS using CVE 2024-388. It targets Xbox One and Xbox Series consoles running kernel versions. I'll just be reading the last part of the numbers here, 4478, 4908, and 4909. The initial entry point is via the game script UWP application. The first stage payloads, PE loader, and network loader are provided by Solstice, and this exploit was developed by Emma Kirkpatrick as well as Lander Brandt. Now this is exciting because I've been covering this here in a few videos and a couple episodes of Mod Chat. There was a proof of concept script we were able to run on a system here. I was also able to show you all how you could get your consoles set up for this. So I will say here, this will be a video you can follow along to, but at the same time, unfortunately, I will state that if this is the first time you're hearing about this, it's going to be a little too late to get in. It does require a few things. First of all, it does require a console with one of those exploitable kernels installed. It also requires you at minimum to have this app installed in retail mode and running an operational offline called GameScript. However, since this app is no longer available on the storefront, unfortunately, you really can't prepare your console for this at the time of watching this. But if you're one of the people who you've been following this, you prepared your console, you can check this all out here. I also wanted to share this here from Carrot Cake, which I have shared before, but for the context of this video, Carrot Cake, one of the developers behind this, has stated this is not a jailbreak. SystemOS is the virtual machine where apps run. It's the environment you get control over when you enable dev mode on your console. This exploit will allow full control over this VM homebrew on retail consoles without dev mode. It will not allow piracy. So just so you all know, this is very early on. What I'm going to show you all is mostly geared towards developers, and this is not a jailbreak. And with this being so early on in the release here, it is also worth noting that currently this is the first iteration, and they are working on some other things such as sideloading support, unsigned non-UWP process launching, as well as SSH support. So again, this is going to be a bit limited in terms of how you can access this, how you can run it, but even right now, what you can do at the very beginning. This is mostly going to be geared towards developers so they can play around with it and see what can be done. However, it's still exciting because we can give this a try here. So for that, if you are wanting to follow along and you have your console already prepared, you're going to need a few things. First of all, you will need your console on the compatible kernel. You are also going to need, at minimum, the GameScript application, and you will have to make sure that your console has been taken offline already, but you are going to have to get it onto your local area network in order to communicate with your PC to and from the console. Now within your settings, I have shown this in previous videos, but you will need to go over to Settings, General, Network Settings, and if you have set up your system as I have shown before, if you were online at the time, you could go over to your advanced settings here. And within this, you would need to set your DNS settings, the primary and secondary, to 127.0.0.1. So that way we will not be able to connect onto the internet itself, but we can still stay on our local area network. But do keep in mind, you do not want to connect to Xbox Live because that could render this exploitable console useless in terms of what we're trying to do here. You're also going to need a way of transferring the script onto your system to run under GameScript. So the first way of doing it, which I'm not going to be covering, was through the Adv File Explorer using the full trust option. Unfortunately, my version of the application is not the full trust application, so I will not be able to use that. If you are one of those people, however, who has set that up already, it does show it here. You can use a full trust explorer like the Advanced File Explorer Full Trust, and it also has instructions on what you can do with the Full Trust File Explorer applications within the usage section. The method that I'm going to be showcasing and using here is going to be one that I showed before, in which I'm going to be using a Raspberry Pi Pico. I do like this because it is a affordable little device that you can keep on the side, and it doesn't have any type of software reliance. So we don't have to have Advanced File Explorer or any others. You really just need the game script application, which is a hard requirement and has been known since the beginning. So let's go ahead and get set up here. Over on your Xbox, if you have set it up as offline and you set your DNS to your local host, you are still going to need to do that, but we're going to take it online while still having the local host set up. You can go into your network settings, hit go online, but within advanced settings, make sure that your DNS settings have been set to 127.0.0.1 for primary and secondary. You'll also, of course, need to make sure that on your console, your game script application is working. So as you can see, I'm able to launch this and I still have my old code right here that I'm able to mess around with. If you're going to be following along with me, you are going to need a Raspberry Pi Pico as well as the accompanying USB cable in order to connect it up to your PC and then connect it to your console. And now we're going to need a few downloads, and for everything here, I'm going to be running this on Windows. So the first thing you're going to need is, of course, Collateral Damage. You can go over to the GitHub repository linked down below in the description, click on Releases, and you're going to need to download the latest build of this. And that's going to be the Collateral Damage remote version. At the time of recording, version 1 is the latest build of this here, but the remote version is what you're going to be downloading. Next up, specific to the Raspberry Pi Pico, we're going to be using Pico Ducky in order to turn our Raspberry Pi Pico into a rubber ducky. There is a good amount of information on here that I do recommend you read through and check out just so you can understand that, but I'm going to show you kind of a quick and dirty setup on here. You can go to the releases section here and then download the latest build. Now you're going to see there's several different languages available. I'm just going to get the standard US version right here. Download the zip and save it somewhere you can easily find it. And lastly, you're going to need Netcat or some kind of Netcat equivalent. Now I will say this here, probably the hardest part of this was finding a build of Netcat that wasn't flagging antivirus on here. Because not only it's a pretty old program, but because of some of the permissions and such that it requires, it can get flagged by your browser and or your antivirus on your machine. So I did find this one here over on GitHub, and in order to download this, there's no release here. You'll need to go over to the code itself, and there is the nc.exe and nc64.exe. NC is fine if you have a 32-bit operating system, but if you have a more modern 64-bit operating system and setup, you can download the 64 version, which is what I'm going to grab. In order to download this, you're going to have to click on either one of these. I'm going to click on nc64.exe, and once this loads up, you're going to come over here, click on the ellipse, and then click on download and save this somewhere you can easily find it. Now at this point, you should have your 3 downloads, and we're also going to need to use command prompt for this. Although this is of course not a download, it's just built into Windows. It's also worth noting as well too that your machine that you're doing this all on must be on the same local network as your Xbox. And I'd also recommend if you're running a VPN, just disable it for the time being so we don't have any network hiccups in regards to connectivity there. However, you can look up command prompt in your programs or CMD, and let's go ahead and open this up. The first thing we're going to need is our computer's local IP address. So all you need to do is type in ipconfig, all one word, space /all, just like that, and then hit enter. There might be several adapters that show up here, but I know this one for sure is the main one that I'm using. You're going to need the IPv4 address of your PC, and in order to copy it out, we can right click here, click on mark, and then highlight the IP address like that, then right click the IP address and keep that on hand because that is copied into our clipboard. Let's go ahead and minimize this for now and work on getting collateral damage. Right here, we can just right click this and extract it into its own folder. I'm going to be using 7-zip to extract it here. When you extract it, it should just bring up a folder like this, and then it's going to look something like this here. You're going to have a couple of scripts, stage 2 bin, and a couple of executables. Now, for whichever method you're using, it depends on the script that you're using. If you're going to be using the Advanced File Manager, which I won't be showing in this video because I cannot show that here just because of the limitation on my console, you can double click on this text file here, and this is going to be the code itself that you would copy and paste over. However, the change that you need to make is going to be right here for variable host IP. You have to clear out this right here, delete that, and then within the double quotes, right click and paste your local IP address and then save that. However, I'm going to be using the Ducky version since I'm going to be using a Raspberry Pi Pico. For this here, it's the exact same thing. Just double click this, go down and look for string variable host IP. Go into this section, delete that out, and between the double quotes, you can right click and paste in your local IP address for your PC. Now, the other change I would recommend here is changing the delay itself. I've noticed I have some issues at the beginning of the script here, getting this typed in when I connect it on the Xbox One or Xbox Series. So for this, I'm going to increase the delay from 300 to 5,000. Those are the only two changes I'm going to make here. You can now go to File, Save, and close out of this. Now, in order to prepare this for a Raspberry Pi Pico, I'd also recommend right-click, copy this out, and paste a copy of it here. Then you're going to want to make sure that if you're within Windows, you click on View, Show, File Name Extensions, because we need to rename this. For the script that we've made a copy of, we need to highlight the whole thing, and we're going to rename it to payload.dd, exactly like that. If you get a message here asking if you want to change the file name extension, that's exactly what we want to do. So this payload has already been crafted, set up, and it's all ready to go. Next up, we're going to need Pico Ducky. You can right click on this, use something such as 7-zip, and extract it into its own folder. Open up the Pico Ducky folder, and you're going to have a series of files and folders right here. Now, one thing to clean it up, I go in here and I just highlight all of the payload files and just go in and delete them, because we're not going to need those ones since we have our own. But now we do need to set up our Raspberry Pi Pico. So for this, you will need to make sure that you have your USB cable ready to go and plug it into your Raspberry Pi Pico and your computer. But when you plug it in, you want to press and hold the only button that should be on there, which is the boot cell or boot select button. Hold down that button and then plug it into your computer while you are holding it down. And once it shows up as a USB drive, release the button. You should know it's successful because it should show up as RPI RP2 or some kind of equivalent right here. Now you'll need to copy over the required firmware. So if you're using a standard Pico, go ahead and grab the Raspberry Pi Pico UF2 file. If you're using a Pico W, grab the Raspberry Pi Pico W UF2 file. Since I'm using a standard Pico, I just need this one. You can right-click on this file, copy it out. Now go over to where your drives are at, navigate to the Raspberry Pi Pico, right-click, and paste next to the index and info UF2 files. It'll take a little bit, but once it's done copying and installing, it should automatically disconnect and then reconnect. So there we go, it's disconnected. And if we wait a bit, there we go, we have a new USB drive showing up. So we can open up a new window, and that's it. We have a USB drive with about 1 megabyte free on here. Now, when we go into this, there might be some other files, but if you have the boot out text, then you should be in good shape here. Navigate back over to the Pico Ducky folder, and we're going to need to grab a folder and several different files. So we can sort this out by type, and now grab all of the Pi files, right click, and copy them. Now go over to your USB drive, which is showing up, right click and paste next to the boot out text file. Once those are copied over, we need to go back over to Pico Ducky, right click on the lib directory, copy it, and then paste it into the root of our USB drive for our Pico. This one's going to take longer. Once all that's been copied out, we can go back over to the Pico Ducky folder, close out of this, go into the Collateral Damage folder, and grab our prepared payload.dd file. Right click, copy this out, go to the root of that USB drive, right click and paste. So there's only going to be one payload file right there. Once this is all done, go back out over to your drives and right click and safely eject your USB drive. Now, one thing I like to do to test this is open up a blank notepad document and then disconnect your Raspberry Pi Pico and then plug it back into your computer. Now make sure that your cursor is focused here on notepad and then plug your USB drive back in. Wait a few moments and let's see what happens. It might take a few seconds here, but as you can see, it should start printing out like this. And if it's just printing this out after a few seconds while still being connected, then congratulations, you've been able to set up your payload accordingly and your Pi Pico is ready to roll. So I'm going to go ahead and unplug this here. It's now stopped typing and we can close out of Notepad. Now we need to set up Netcat. For this here, I recommend taking the Netcat executable and just move it into the Collateral Damage directory. In order to get our file path with everything set up here, I recommend coming over to the address bar, left click in here. It should show you the full file path in which you can highlight this, right click and copy this out. Now for command prompt, let's make sure we're running a elevated version of it. You can look for command prompt, right click this and run it as an administrator. If it brings up a user account control message, just say yes. Now to change the directory, type in cd space and right click here and hit paste for that path. You might not need to do paste either. It might just automatically paste it there, but hit enter and you should now be changed into that directory. Now for our netcat command, we're going to use nc64.exe, or if you're using the 32-bit version, it will be nc.exe, whichever one you're using. But I'm going to be using nc64.exe space dash lvnp space 7070 and hit enter. Leave this up and running in the background because it's going to be listening over port 7070. So we've got that running and working. While it's listening on our computer, over on the Xbox, we can get everything set up. Again, make sure you are connected to your local network and run the game script application. Once it opens up, you might have a bit of your old script right here. Just go ahead, highlight this. I'm hitting the Y button on my controller and then close out of this. Now I'm going to temporarily hook up a USB keyboard just so I can go here, highlight everything, and then delete the old script, since this old one is not going to be needed. Once that's been deleted, there we go. I'm going to disconnect my USB keyboard. A USB keyboard's not required, but it does make it easier and faster than doing that same thing with a controller. Now I know how to navigate this a little bit more than last time. So you can hold down the X button and then you can move game script over to the right to get a bit more visibility. Now I'm still going to hold the X button down, but I'm going to hit the LB button on the controller to bring up the windows right here. We need to enable show code run window. And there we go. I'm going to do the exact same thing with that, just kind of move code run down here. And those should be the three things that we need here. So I'm going to hold down the X button yet again and tap the LB button until you get over to game script. Now within game script, come down here over to where you should be entering your text, hit the Y button on your controller, and then press the B button to bring the keyboard back down. So now in order to get the script up and running, grab your Raspberry Pi Pico and hook it up to your Xbox One or Xbox Series. I've just connected it up here. I made sure that the cursor is focused in the game script text window. And as you can see right here, it has started typing everything. So it's going through this here automatically. All you need to do is sit here and wait. Just let the script do its magic and type in everything here. Again, it will take several minutes for your Raspberry Pi Pico to enter this script. If you feel like following along, you can open up the game script text file on your computer right here and just see where you're at in the script. Really, when you get to these strings here, such as allocate our token info buffer, write the IP to the global page, map the PE loader, you'll know that you're pretty much at the end here. So just wait for that to show up on your console. All right, and here we are at the end. So this has taken just under 10 minutes in order to get the script written inside of GameScript. Once that's done, you can now disconnect the Raspberry Pi Pico from your console. And once that's been entered, we're going to jump back over to our PC in order to get the necessary payload sent over. We still need our netcat listening here, but we can go ahead and open up another command prompt here, which I'm going to run as administrator, say yes to this. And just like before, we're going to grab our collateral damage directory, copy that out, hit CD space, right click, paste, hit enter. We need to run the payload server executable. So you can type in payload underscore and then hit the tab key to automatically finish that. Hit space dash dash stage 2 space stage2.bin space dash dash run space run.exe and hit enter. If you get another window asking for permissions on this on your network, you will have to say yes to this here, but it should show that the server is listening and the file listener is listening. Now again, make sure these two are up and running and navigate over to your console yet again. For this, you can hold down the X button on your controller and tap the LB button until you get to code run. When you're at code run, navigate down and hit the A button on run code once. The console is going to act like it's frozen, but just wait. Now my current frame is set to 1 and I've had this sitting here for a few minutes. However, if nothing is showing up here on either of these two and there's nothing going on your Xbox, you might just have to try it again. Thankfully, thanks to the autosave feature of GameScript, we don't have to enter in this entire script again. So if you need to run it another time, we can go ahead and just turn off the console, turn it back on, and see if we can try this again. If you have to run this again, just go ahead, open up GameScript, and just like before, we can go ahead and get this all set up. Navigate over to Windows, make sure show code run window is up, and now let's go ahead run code once. And here we go, check it out, we do have something. So for the payload server itself, it was able to send over stage 2, send over the run executable, waiting for new connection. And if we navigate over here to our original prompt, as you can see, I was able to connect my PC over to my Xbox. It shows collateral damage, it shows the build number I'm on, found likely kernel base attempting exploit, and it was able to run this here. And over at the Xbox, it is going to look like it is frozen. The current frame is still set to 0, and it's not responsive to my controller at all, but keep the console up and running. From here, technically, we have exploited the system, so congratulations, you are now within the SystemOS kernel. So you can see here, this automatically sets to a S path. Now I'm going to do a dir right there. And as you can see, these are all folders within my Xbox's drive, which is pretty cool to see. If we want to emulate a bit of what Emma did when showing this exploit here, I can show you all this, for example. So just like I showed, you can do a directory listing right there. We can even do something such as this, where I'm going to type in echo quote world. Let's do that. We're going to do a greater than sign, and you can pipe this here into a text file. I'm going to call this here example.txt, hit enter, do dir again, and as you can see right here, my text file is showing up. So that shows that I now have write access through the kernel itself on the Xbox One that I'm using. If I want to open and read that back, I can do type example.txt, and there we go. As you can see right there, my hello world is showing up. So this here is the first time I have gotten kernel access to the system itself, and I can see this here. You can also change directory, so I'm kind of curious about this. Change directory into TV. Do another listing right there, and that's cool. You got live TV settings. Unfortunately, the tabbing option doesn't work, so you have to kind of type in everything manually. But for example there, you got that. Now if you want to navigate back up, you can type in cd space ... And just like that, we're back in the TV directory. Do that again. We're back here in the root. So again, you can go ahead and play around with this here. And for example, if I want to explore the apps, I can just kind of keep doing this and play around with it for fun. Wow, that's actually kind of surprising. I don't have anything on that. I'm curious about the program file, so I can change directory into there. And here we go, I got some a little more exciting where I navigated into program files, Windows apps, and right here we have a few things where there's a straight up deleted one. You got some more internal stuff such as Bulldog. We got some references to game script right here, for example. Halo Spartan Assault, that is something that I installed. Dolby Vision for MFT. Dark Dreams Don't Die, yep, that is a game I have on here. And cool, just awesome to see here so far. Again, there's not all too much end users such as myself can really do here. This is more going to be geared towards developers, but again, this is showing right here that this is up and running and working, which is definitely super exciting to see. For anybody who's wondering about the Xbox, right here, the app itself, the GameScript app, seems to be soft locked, so to speak, and that is intentional. However, the console itself is still working, so you can go ahead and close out of the app whenever you're wanting to close that up, do whatever you need to here. Otherwise, congratulations, this is how you can set up and run the Collateral Damage SystemOS kernel exploit on your Xbox One or Xbox Series console. This is really cool to see here, and I do want to give some shoutouts and thank yous right here to all the people who have been involved with this. Not only Emma Kirkpatrick, as well as Lander Brandt, Solstice for the work they did here, as well as the thanks that you can come down here and check out for Chompy, Tux User, Baw, Xbox One Research, and the Xbox Scene Discord. Really didn't know how we were going to get something like this on the Xbox One and Xbox Series consoles, but it is still incredibly awesome to see. And like I've been saying a few times here, if you are wanting some more direct updates on this right from the developer, I do recommend following Emma or Carrotcake over on Twitter, who has been pretty paramount in kind of teasing and getting more information out there and explaining more about this here. Anyways, that's about it for this video here. This is Mr. Mario signing off. Thank you all for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, a like would absolutely be appreciated. And if you didn't like it, a dislike is fine as well too.